Hello, everyone. On behalf of Team Westport, the Friends of the Weston Public Library, and the Westport Museum for History and Culture, I welcome you to this slightly changed out evening as we learn about Harriet Tubman from the two women who brought a new book, Harriet Tubman, Military Scout and Tenacious Visionary, to life. Our moderator tonight is Harold Bailey Jr. He is the Executive Vice President of McLeod Associates and has been the chair of Team Westport since its inception in 2003. Harold is also the recipient of the Anti-Defamation League's Distinguished Community Leadership Award for Upper Fairfield County, the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County's ACE Award, and the Westport Country Playhouse's 2024 Leadership Award. He's also a great friend of the Westport Library. Rita Daniels is the great-great-great-grandniece of Harriet Tubman and regularly speaks on her family's legacy. She is the president and founder of the Harriet Tubman Learning Center based in Powder Springs, Georgia. She earned her master's degree in education and bachelor's degree in human resources at Trident University International. Rita's mission is to promote the education of underserved children so that no child suffers the humiliation of illiteracy as Harriet did. Jean Marie Wiesen is an investigative author and a mystery crime writer of books such as The Case of the Mousetrap Legend. She attended Art Center College of Design in Southern California, where she majored in still photography and minored in creative writing. She continues to polish her writing craft under the tutelage of author Robert Pollock and lives around the corner from Westport in Weston. Now, for you at home, you might be wondering how this book came to be. And I've been told that Rita came to Connecticut in June of 2022, where she visited New Haven, Bridgeport, and Weston, where she officiated their very first Juneteenth celebration, a courtesy that was made possible by their DEI organization. It was at that event that she met Jean, and they would later collaborate on and become co-authors of this amazing book about Harriet Tubman. There has never been a better time in America's recent history for a book like this, and Connecticut has earned a special place in Rita's heart, and we are extremely happy that she could come back to our state, even if she's just on screen right now and not in our fabulous library. If you have any questions through the event, please feel free to write them into the chat. I will read them out later after the conversation. And copies of Harriet Tubman, Military Scout and Tenacious Visionary are available for purchase either through your bookstore or if you email jkeller@westportlibrary.org after this event, then we can arrange a pickup for you. That's more for the people who are in Connecticut. So without further ado, Harold, Rita, Jean, I give you the screen.
I do have one question. Are we not going to be seeing the people who are asking the questions, to give them a visual so we can see them?
This is a webinar, so no, we will only be seeing us, and we unfortunately cannot do that on a webinar.
Okay, could I open up a second link to where they are or no?
Zoom doesn't have that. We have 92 people watching, and they're watching us right now.
Okay. So, right, individually, right? So we ready? Well, listen, I think we'd all rather be in the library with hundreds of people there visually and with the other people streaming in. But I still welcome this opportunity and this honor to spend some time with both of you. And first, I want to start by congratulating you both on a very, very important work and a very powerful one. The book is a fast-paced journey through what I call an iconic life, and it touches on so many different parts of American history. But even more than that, it shows what an incredible human being Harriet Tubman was. and an incredible figure inside of American history. What I wanted to do first was just to set the stage for, since this is Black History Month, and that is American history, to say that the institution of slavery in the United States, which started in 1619 and continued for 250 years, was one of the most brutal institutions ever instituted, I think, globally. In the United States, in effect, what it meant was that a person was kidnapped, shanghaied, brought to the United States, and forced to work sun up to sundown with someone who claimed to be their, quote, master, who supposedly had complete control over them. Now, it would be one thing if that person felt that way or some small group around them felt that way, but for an entire country to say that was legal and that was okay made this one of the most brutal institutions that could be imaginable. And not only were 4 million people subject to it, they were either shanghaied and brought to the United States and forced into enslavement, or they were born into it from the folks who had been shanghaied and brought here, or in some cases, people who were free, so to speak, in other parts of the country were shanghaied and brought back into slavery at some point. Nobody did more to make the nation realize what an injustice this was and what needed to be done to overturn it than Harriet Tubman, not only by words, but by her actions. And that's one of the reasons why we are so fortunate to have her direct descendant here, Miss Daniels, this evening. And I want to start by asking Miss Daniels something about, as the keeper of really the history and the family and the legacy, if you'll tell us a little bit about your background, and then leading up to how you met Jean.
Certainly. My background pretty much is I have gone around throughout the United States in many areas talking about Harriet Tubman. And it just so happens that when I went to the Westport event, I was one of the speakers. And I spoke about Harriet Tubman, what she had gone through and all the things that she had to give up in order to become the free woman that she was. And from that speech that I gave, there's where I met Jean. And of course, Jean will have a different version of our meeting. However, she was in the crowd also. And so when I was done speaking, I started walking around to some of the other booths because we had to go somewhere else. And she walked up to me and we started speaking, and she told me that she was a writer and a mystery writer, and that something to the effect that my story is really impressive. And we exchanged cards, and from there, we had our first phone call a few days later, and that's when we started talking about the book itself, and that she wanted to work with me on a book for Harriet Tubman. And I was like, okay, And for me, that was a great opportunity because I had started writing things about Harriet Tubman, but I could not put it in book formation. And so collaborating with someone that already had written a book was a perfect opportunity to get it done.
Great.
And that's my story.
Fair enough. And Jean, let's get your side of it too.
First of all, Harold, I want to thank you again so much for doing this. I really appreciate you. And yeah, I'm so sorry we're not doing this in the library itself. And that's where I first met you. And at Clarence Jones event. yeah, yeah, and it's not that much different from what Rita just said. You know, I had no idea that she was going to be at the Juneteenth event in Weston. And, you know, it was one of those, what I would refer to as a completely serendipitous thing. And, you know, I didn't have anything else to do that day. And it was like, well, okay, I guess I'll go. And when she came out to speak, I was like, wow, okay, descendant of Harriet Tubman. That's pretty amazing. What are you doing in Weston? And I was just, I don't know, I was just really
Blown away.
yeah, it was like, okay, you're just hanging out in Weston, all right. All the way from Georgia. Yeah, all right. But I was so thrilled that I had come, and I thought there's got to be a reason that I'm here. And you know, and you know, when you learn about history in school and you realize that you learn it from such a cursory level. And I've always been drawn to history anyway. I love historical events and people involved in history. And I was so enthralled by what Rita had to say. And we did discuss at the time, you know, the fact that nothing had ever been written about Harriet Tubman with a direct descendant. And all I could think of was, that is so wrong. Why has this never been done? And, you know, we did exchange cards and we discussed it later on. You know, we got in contact with each other. And all I can say is it was totally meant to be. And I am so thrilled that, you know, here we are, 2.5 years later, over 2.5 years later, and what a fabulous journey it has been. I have learned so much, you know, through Rita, and it's just been time well spent. I wouldn't have exchanged it for anything else. And I
Right.
think the
That's-
main thing is educationally, we're deprived.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, what's in a little bit about the book and what I found really interesting and had never ever connected was the importance of the legacy that came from the family, having come from Ghana, having been Ashanti in Ghana, and the fact that that's where the book starts and that's where the focus is. Can you could you both tell us something about that start? Why you decided to start there?
Well, I can explain my purpose of starting there
Sure.
because there was another person who wanted to write a book on Harriet Tubman, and it's about 800 pages. Okay. And in her book, she started with Harriet Tubman in Maryland. And I said, no, in order to tell the story, you got to go further back. Well, she did go back, and I told her about modesty and so forth. But then her story became a lot of lies. And I didn't sign on for that kind of stuff. No, because no one really knows the whole story of modesty. Even her name was not really Modesty. It was a given name. But this person, when she wrote it, she had all kinds of stuff going on, you know. And I was very disappointed. But when Jean and I talked about it, I said, it has to start in Ghana. We cannot just do this. And because it was a journey that Modesty made that brought her body in a brutal way to Maryland. And so We wanted it to start there so that people would understand where she came from and where she was going. And that's the main thing that I want people to understand. You need to know where you came from in order to know where you're going, so you don't let history, like nowadays, repeat itself.
Repeat itself. And you are talking about in modesty. Modesty is the given name to Harriet's grandmother.
Exactly.
Right. Just to make that clear. Yeah. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what happened with her and then her daughter and then the family a little bit?
Well, after Modesty made that journey to Maryland on the boat, with the abuse, even walking miles, even to get to the boat, and then they were in the castle, supposed to be castle, but it was a slave castle pretty much, called what do they call it, the point of no return. And you're right, they never, once they went in that, they never came back out. From the way they entered, they came out on the other side, only to get on a boat for another journey, with chains and so forth. And that, for me and a lot of family members, or, just knowing that some of our family was dragged across the ocean like that, it's heartbreaking. And I remember a friend of mine did a skit at one of my speaking events of Modesty and told the story in her version. And I stood up there crying because it's heartbreaking. I don't want people to think that it was beautiful or anything like that. There was nothing pretty about it. To be taken out of your home country, taking you to a new land, changing your name where you only had the modesty. And to us, we never knew what her real name was. And some people, like I said, wrote fabrication.
Well, and the book really lays out what that journey was like. And it is
devastating. Yeah.
It really is. Then there's the issue about what she faced once she got here in the United States, and how we got to Harriet's parents. So I guess we're talking about Dorchester County in Maryland, which is where she was. So can you tell us a little bit about how Harriet's young life, or her life when she was born, what she was born into?
Harriet was born into slavery, no matter what. Her dad was already a free slave, Ben Ross, but Harriet was I think she was the fourth born or the fifth. Geez, I gotten older, so some things. But either way,
there are a lot of kids. Yeah.
There's 9, like my family. We're from a family of 9, and it's so funny that Harriet, Modesty gave birth to Harriet's mother, which is Rit, and Modesty gave birth to Harriet. They called her Rit, R-I-T, and she eventually had one of those slave marriages to Ben Ross, and together they had 9 children. So pretty much so I don't want to go too deep in it because we want you all to buy the book.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but yes, Harriet was one of those persons. She was rebellious. You couldn't force her to do anything. She was one ever since she was a little girl. She learned a lot from her dad, but even at the age of 6, she became a babysitter for a slave, master, woman, wife. to take care of a little baby. Well, she was the baby herself. She could not let that baby cry. And at times when that baby cried, she got whipped. And she, like I said, she was rebellious. She would run from him, go hide, and be gone for who knows how long. But that's how she was. She was that type of young little girl.
And as I understand it, she did at one point, as she got a little older, spend some time with her father traveling in the Maryland area.
I'm not sure about the traveling because they were slaves. They were not allowed to go off their plantations. So she had celestial knowledge from her dad, learned about the sky, and she learned a lot about that. She learned about roots and things for healing and so forth from her dad. But that is pretty much her story. Now, when she started traveling, it was pretty much after she was free, but not until then.
Well, so you've got this young person who's rebellious, who grows up, and basically has a will of her own. What are some of the qualities that got her to the point where she's ready to leave? What might have triggered her leaving that initial time?
Well, when she was 13 years old, I believe, she was hit in the head with a weight of some sort, and she was unconscious from that. So she ended up back at her parents' house, who helped heal her and everything. But it was, when people say, was it a good thing? In some ways, it helped her have a deeper relationship with God.
Mm.
She would fall asleep and have dreams. She had sleeping spells. You could be talking to her one minute, and the next minute she's sleeping, and you'd have to wait for her to wake up. But when she would wake up, she had all this knowledge on what she needed to do. And it was up until the point where she learned that some of her family members were about to be sold. And that triggered her. And she learned a lot from people who didn't look like us or me, maybe like Jean. They were the Quakers. And the Quakers just told her, there's a better place. Now, she knew a story from the Bible. And that story was about Moses, how he was able to free the slaves in Egypt.
The Israelites.
Right, the Israelites. So in her mindset, even though they had the slave Bible, that was still a story that they told. It's almost like, well, why'd you tell that story if you didn't want her to? Because that stuck in her mind that if Moses can do it, so can she.
It's incredible.
Right, Jean?
Yeah.
Right?
So and that's one of the many things in the book that will be a revelation to people when you go through it. There was a slave Bible. Right?
Revelation, Harold.
Yeah.
That was like a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
I didn't, when I say it kept me awake, when that came up, I didn't sleep for a couple of days. And, thanks to Rita's Aunt Pauline, she was invaluable. Absolutely. She is invaluable.
At 97.
She is an absolute treasure. She really is, because I kept going back to Rita. Where is this Israelite phrase coming from? Why does Harriet keep using it? Hence, and why does she keep using going down to Egypt? And Rita said, let me check with Aunt Pauline, and up pops the slave Bible. I was like, what? I'd never heard of it. And the research that popped up out of that was, it was shocking to me. Absolutely shocking.
Many of the pages were missing, or the slave Bible, it was a Bible, but a lot of the information that's in the Bible was gone.
Propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
All of it slanted towards making people feel that they
Yeah.
were in the position that God wanted them to be in.
Yeah.
Yep.
To their
Understood.
advantage, slaveholders' advantage. Yeah.
So we've got all that's happened, that's forming this, forming her and helping her move forward. But if we take a look at what it took in order to go even on this initial journey, and just say something about that and how it just seems almost superhuman that someone would be able to survive like this. The enormity of the risk, because if she got caught, she could have been killed. She could have been mutilated. She certainly would have been punished severely. The fact that there's a real good chance that you could just die trying to get away, if even without anybody catching you. And yet she was able to do this with such determination and vision. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and her mind was made up that it was time for her to go. And like I said, it was a help from the Quakers, and there's where the Underground Railroad came in place.
Mm-hmm.
And if it hadn't been for all the people that helped her, fed her, let her know when it was safe to leave and so forth, but she also had that vision, the vision that she received from God, that she always knew when it was time to leave. And she would make most of her travel would be during the evening. So there was a lot that she would learn, including direction. Don't go this way, go that way.
Mm.
Certain things. They had dogs out looking for them. They were. She was more like an animal, pretty much, because they were hunting her down like that. And I look at it from the standpoint of, here is a woman out of determination that was able to not ever get caught, but also to live until the age of 92, until she had pneumonia, not because she died from pneumonia, not from being caught or killed.
It's just
And she
incredible.
was still able to rescue a lot of family members and made all those trips to go back. And so I can just say that she was the kind of woman that she kept getting up, first of all, even when she fell.
Mm.
She was determined to keep going back. She was not going to stop until she got her family out of that slavery position. And so for her, her strength, the resilience, so much that she was giving of herself for others. And that's what she's done.
It's just incredible.
Well,
Yeah.
and knowing that she could, and trusting, knowing who to trust, and the ability to work with other people to achieve her goals. Working with the Quakers, being able to trust other people to reach her end goal, of helping other people. Yeah.
As the book makes clear, I mean, she was really tied to a who's who of some of the leading people in the United States, including the Secretary of State,
Yeah.
the Sewards, and others, not to mention Frederick Douglass and others as a speaker, but as a doer, they all admired who she was and what she stood for.
Yeah.
Well, so we know that this originally started with the trips up to Philadelphia, but with the Fugitive Slave Act that got passed in 1850, all of a sudden there had to be a longer journey in order to be sure.
They had to go through Canada. Yeah.
Had to go through Canada.
Yeah.
Which when you take a look at the map and what you would have to do to get there, it's just absolutely incredible, as in unbelievable that would have been possible.
Yeah,
But,
I get tired going for an hour-long hike with my dogs.
Yeah.
Brett Woods.
Yeah,
And it's staggering to me when you think about, and I've mentioned this to you before, and Rita and I have discussed it, when you think about the footwear that she had, the lack thereof, the worn out, and, the wearing a dress, and, walking miles and miles and miles. I mean, from Delaware to Pennsylvania, that's not a short trek.
but when you go through New York State to get up to Canada,
Yeah.
it's incredible. And she kept going back, and she kept
Yeah.
going back. She kept
It's
going back.
astounding. It's absolutely astounding.
Obviously, she was also a great speaker and a representative
Yeah.
in the cause of abolition. Well, let's talk a little bit about once the Civil War started and her role in the military as a scout. Because I think people know about the Underground Railroad. I mean, it's kind of in people's heads, but what happened there? What was that involvement like?
You talking about what was her role as a military? She served as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she was a spy also during that time. So, but her role was as a nurse to heal some of the wounded soldiers
Right.
that weren't getting that help, because it was almost they had nothing to help them with.
Mm.
They were Africans. They were not privy to healing, except when Harriet came and she started turning all that around.
In fact, I guess her counterpart with white troops was Clara Barton, who ended up starting the Red Cross, but she was taking care of Black soldiers, the African American soldiers who were fighting. So there was that, and also she really was one of the first women to actually lead an attack that was strategic for the United States in the Civil War, as I understand it, militarily. So,
Yeah, the Combahee River Raid.
mm-hmm.
And, when you think about what she was able to accomplish, being illiterate, in that, and, she couldn't read a map, and scouting out locations of where, mines had been placed along the river, so that the torpedo boats could make it down safely down the river. Things like that, turning the tide of the war, and saving more people. It's just, it's phenomenal what she was able to accomplish. And you keep going back to, the head injury, and the narcolepsy as a result. And I sometimes wonder, her intelligence level, what her IQ must have been if it had IQ tests, in that day and age. It had to have been off the charts, even with the head injury. I mean, her intelligence level was just phenomenal. Her quick thinking, her imagination, just her skill set alone, just across the board, was just phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal. She could run circles around most people today.
Said, and I guess after the war, if we talk about that, she spent time in New York State, and really spent most of her time there. I guess she was involved in the suffragette movement as well as a spokesperson, who was fighting for the rights for women to have the right to vote, actually for all people, Black people as well. And then Black men got the vote, then she was fighting and a spokesperson in the suffragette movement as well. So can you say anything about her later life, and which I think the book kind of details as well?
That's why we want them to get the book. But in her later life, she also ended up living back in Auburn. If you're talking about from when it was during the suffragette, she spoke up on, she was involved with helping kids, making sure they get their education. That was one of her goals. But also for women, she wanted women's rights. That's what she fought for.
Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, one of the last things that she did was to help raise enough money for a home for elderly African Americans in Auburn.
The home for the aged, yes, which is Auburn, New York, and I've been there several times. Of course, I'm from Auburn, and so why not? That was my great aunt. So the home for the aged was for those people, especially her family. She took them there, but they were people that had no no money. They were poor. She was poor herself. She took whatever she got, she gave to others. But that's when Sarah Bradford came in to help her raise money to keep the home open. And that's where the person she sat with to write that book. That was around the second book was 1886, I believe. So yeah, it was a difficult time even then. When they had that repeat of the Slave Act, the Fugitive Slave Act, they were after her. They were looking for her. And she would hide on her property. And the funny part about that is my mom found out about being related to Harriet Tubman when she was in her 20s. Aunt Pauline was 25. My mom was in her early 20s. I think she said around 21. And she said they never talked about it. Okay, so Aunt Pauline is 97. And so even after that, Harriet Tubman's name was not as prominent as it is today. So back then it was a hush-hush conversation. The Fugitive Slave Act was to re-slave people. And that was when Patty came aboard.
Oh, the person who would
Patty.
lead the troops
Yeah.
or lead people to Shanghai people back into slavery.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was
That's
good
a
for
whole
that.
other chapter.
So
Well, that's what I'm saying. The main thing is we want everyone to experience Harriet Tubman's journey. We can tell it all here, but then there's no reason for you to get the book. We need you to follow that journey and understand that it's important today that you know your past, who went through those things, and so you don't get yourself caught up into going into that. You need to look at what's going on today. Immigrants are being taken away. Well, what jobs? I mean, they had jobs. So now they're losing their jobs. Who's going to do them jobs? Not me. Don't think that a Black person is going to go and take those jobs and do them. Because we know where we've been. We know I know where my roots are. And she fought for her freedom. You think I'm going to let someone slip that in and say, okay, you're going to get paid $4 an hour? There's not anyone out there. I mean, and then I take that back. There are people out there who will take it because they always say something is better than zero. But what kind of life will you live? Here in this country, the prices keep going up. They're not going down. You're not going to be able to afford it. You're going to become someone else's slave for beans.
Mhm. Something,
They've got all rich people now running the country, millionaires and so forth, or more.
well, your life and your book is a real wake-up call.
Well, we want that to be a wake-up call.
Yes.
We want people to understand
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman's journey.
Sure.
If she can do it, so can you.
Well, with that, let's, I did want you to get a chance also, Rita, to say something about your learning center. And
But of course, now, when you buy the book, there is a QR code in that book to help donate to the Learning Center, okay? We need people to get the book and donate to the Learning Center. Now, I believe, I thought at one point they were going to put the QR code out there, but the library, they said to reach out to the library to get the book if you want it. But the Harriet Tubman Learning Center is to continue the legacy of Harriet Tubman. Now, there's a lot of Harriet Tubman businesses out there, museums, schools as well. People are selling clothes, Harriet Tubman, but none is attached to a descendant, a person who can actually continue the legacy. There's people who can continue the name of Harriet Tubman, but not the legacy. She did not have that opportunity to learn how to read or write. And so therefore, we've started the Harriet Tubman Learning Center in her honor to continue that legacy for those kids who are failing, who are underserved in the schools. There's kids who are being passed on even today. They're in school, but they have this new law or rule, no child left behind. Guess what? You won't be left behind, but you'll get passed on and still can't do the work. That's the last thing we want you to do, to feel like, okay, I passed, I don't care. I understand you may not like school, but you got to get a better education or a trade or something. Become independent, get your own business. Whatever it is, do not allow anyone to set you back and put you in a position where you can't get anything but a low-paying job. You have control. But the Learning Center is an avenue for us to help these young underserved kids, and we offer them STEM and robotics, mentoring, all kinds of offerings, for even English as a second language for some. And it just depends on what city it gets open, but we are looking at several cities. So
are you currently open in one of them already, or is
well, during COVID, we had to close our doors just like everyone else. We could not bring our children into the building. Everyone was being safe, wearing their mask like they were supposed to. But during that time, also my mom passed away during COVID. She did not die from COVID, but she wasn't here. She was the person who kept me going. She is the reason why the Learning Center even started. And it had a lot to do with some of the things that she was lacking, or other people forced her to lack or not be a part of. And so we came up with starting the Harriet Tubman Learning Center, mainly for the reason to make sure that the legacy of Harriet Tubman continues, and Mom is also honored for that. So when she passed away, that put me in a very deep depression. It took 2 years for me to even get back up, to keep going, because it's like, okay, now my mom was the person who spearheaded all of this. So I was not able to move forward. And then, of course, as time went by, I knew I was sitting on something that was necessary and needed. And that's when we decided it's time to get back up. And let's get it back on track. Harriet Tubman Learning Center, you are going to be back up and running. These kids loved it. We fed them. We provided transportation. We took them to events. We had children, they were learning how to do robotics. They built robots. They even failed and they were failing in school. Even though they were failing, when we picked them up and when we brought them to the Learning Center, the first thing we did not do is focus on what they were failing. We gave them something that they enjoy doing, that was building a robot. When they built their robot, they realized that they can do a lot of things. And then when we told them about failing in school, a lot of these kids already knew the stuff. As it turned out, they were just not interested. They were bored.
Yep.
And we
Okay.
found that just by changing their vision, we changed their mindset. You're not going to
Sure.
fail,
Sure.
but if you want to move forward, we even had some of the kids, when it came to putting those robots together, once they learned how to do it, they got in front of the class and started teaching it. So that gave them even a little bit of power. But that's what it
Sure.
takes. It takes someone that understands children, who wants to work with children. And it's not for anyone who wants to always be in charge. You have to let those kids be kids and bring out the best in them. They have hidden talents that I was surprised. I had kids that were like geniuses building stuff, and I'm like, okay, and you're failing? So yeah,
Sure.
it is.
Okay. Well, we certainly applaud that, and we'll try to get the codes up. Jennifer, you ready for questions?
We do have some questions from the audience. I'm going to start with the one that just dovetails right into what Rita was talking about. Rita, what cities are you planning to have the learning centers grow?
Well, first of all, we're back in Georgia, one in Auburn, New York. That's where Harriet Tubman lived, and that's where I was from. Definitely Connecticut. We're looking at Bridgeport.
Mhm.
And then, of course, DC and Philadelphia. Now, those are five, and each state has to assist in raising the money because we can't do it on our own. And so far, that's where we are. We have to raise the money to get the schools reopened.
Hmm. So the next question is about your growing up, Rita. When you're growing up and you know that you are the great great grandniece of such an amazing character that we all learned about in school, what kinds of stories did your family have that made the whole legacy come alive for you as you were growing up? Like, what was your favorite, like, inside story?
Well, I guess a lot of people don't realize, in order for me to get to the story of Harriet Tubman, I went through a whole lot of things where I wanted to give up on myself. Um, and based on those things that happened to me, I became very depressed. And, thank God it was my mom again, who, and I'm not going to tell that particular story here. It's not in the book, and in due time, when it's time for me to write that story, it'll be done. But from that, I had my mom telling me, I wouldn't eat, I didn't care. So my mother would always remind me of Harriet Tubman and tell me how back during her day, her life was not easy either. And I'm sure that she had times that she wanted to give up, but guess what? She never gave up. And it had to just really get in my mindset that do I want to keep going, or do I want to stay in a place of depression? And that's what I mean. When I say I didn't eat, my mother would was with me would bring me milkshakes just so I would drink something. And so I had another friend that came over and she just started yelling at me. I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand. And she says, you know what? Look at you. You're a beautiful woman. You have all kinds of opportunities in front of you. And it's time, you got to get it go. You got to keep going and get up. And it was her. I was mad at her too. I was mad at my mom. I was mad at her. But it took 2 days. And then I realized that she was right. And when I got to the point, when I got to the point of moving forward, my mother told me what I needed to do. Here's what you got to do. I want you to get that bachelor's degree. I got it. I need you to go and get that master's degree. Okay, I got it. And then she came back with, you know what? Now that you've completed, I said, Mom, I'm not going back to school. I'm not going back to school. So that's when that positivity, the whole thing that I was going through, in reading her story, I just kept reading it. I just kept letting it feed into me. It's like if she could do this during a time when they had nothing, they didn't have a car. I did. She didn't have access to I didn't have raggedy shoes or anything like that. So those are some of the things that made me realize that if this woman could do it, she can't even read or write. And I got a master's degree now. So those were all the things I was always comparing Harriet to me. And my mom said, and Harriet's mother's name is Rit. What's the first 3 letters of your name? I said, R-I-T. Oh my, wow. Look at the comparison. Look how much you can obviously, and no one calls me Rit, but those were some of the things that my mom said. And so I had to listen to it. And that just made me realize that I need to tell her story. And when Jean came to me and we talked about it, we collaborated, and there were times that we would go back and forth. No, but that's what collaboration is all about. And we were able to manage and pull through it and get the book done. It took time. Then we find a publisher. That was perfect. We also had to move forward. It's like, geez, here we are. The book is done. The book is done. And I'm happy about it.
Great. And we are happy about it too.
Yes.
I'm glad.
Would you talk about some of the places where you're going to be speaking after this, in case anybody wants to catch you in person, since we are unfortunately on Zoom today?
Well,
I heard you might be on TV tomorrow, is why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Yes. So tomorrow I'm going to be at Today's Show at 9:00, and that is NBC with El Roker. And that we're going to be presenting or speaking about the book. So I know the show starts at 9, and I believe I'll be on in between 9 and 9:30. So tune into that. And I couldn't tell you what number it is because I'm from Atlanta.
It's 4.
That's okay.
And
I'm
Harold
sure
just
people
told
know
you.
where to go for
For
El Roker.
NBC.
We know where.
Okay, so we're doing the Today Show. And then I'm looking at my schedule again, and thank God for Wayne who put it all together. We're going to visit the United Nations. We're going to go to the Harriet Tubman statue and get pictures. Then there's a couple other things. We're going to the city of Bridgeport. Then the town of Trumbull, Connecticut. Several other people I'm going to be speaking to. So that's why I'm here until Sunday morning.
Terrific. We
Yes.
do also have a question. Is this book available now or will it be on audiobook?
It will be, Pegasus is working on getting it available for audio.
Okay, terrific. And I'm just going to remind everybody that you can purchase the book anywhere. If you happen to be in or around Westport, you can send me an email, jkeller@westportlibrary.org, and purchase it through the library. I would also like to thank all three of you for coming out tonight, whichever one it is. Yes, G?
I have one request, please.
Okay.
If I have a second. My hometown, I grew up in Pacific Palisades, California. And as most of you know, it recently burned down. It no longer exists. And so if any of you are so inclined, I would ask, I did speak to Jessica about this, deputy publisher of Pegasus. I grew up in the Palisades Library. They practically had to throw me out when it closed. They had to go find me in the stacks. So between the library, and it's no longer there. My high school is gone. The park that I played in, the rec center is gone. Everything is gone. One night, I was on the phone with one of my cousins, and one of the homes we lived in, I watched it completely engulfed in flames. While I was posting about this event on several social platforms, I've reconnected with a couple of people that I was in elementary school with. Part of my elementary school is gone. The gym I learned to play sports in is gone. And one of my friends told me, she said, yeah, the first house you guys grew up in, it's gone too. So I wanted to ask people if they're so inclined. I mean, literally my foundation is gone. And it's, you know, as incredible as this is, the book, it's really shaken me this last several weeks. If you're so inclined, there's a CAL FIRE page, and you know, a lot of people I know lost everything. And if
Sure.
you're also so inclined to donate to the American Library Association, because that library that I absolutely loved, and I was one of those kids that I was always burning out batteries in the flashlight. My dad would ask me, why are we going through so many batteries? Because I would read underneath the covers at night. That was my passion, reading.
So,
Yep.
Donate to the American Library Association for the rebuilding of the library.
Thank you, Joe.
Any
G.
library. Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you. So moving forward, as Rita said, we need to look to Harriet for ways to move our lives forward and to
And
really
that's
make the
something that
world a
Harriet,
better place.
that's
So
something Harriet
remember
would
to
do.
purchase your copy of Harriet Tubman, Military Scout and Tenacious Visionary at a local store. And thank you all so much for coming tonight. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. And thank you, Rita, Jean, and
Yeah,
Harold,
I
so
just want
much
to
for
put one
tonight.
little plug in for my manager, Wayne Winston, who set up all these appointments, but I tell you, I've known him for like 16 years. And he met my mother, and my mother told me to make sure you keep him informed of what's going on. And he made all these appointments for me. That's why, you know, he's my driver and takes me where I need to go. And while I'm here in this lovely state of Connecticut with all that lovely snow.
Mm, Well,
More to come. More to
maybe
come hopefully this
it'll
weekend.
melt tomorrow.
What?
Thank you all so much for
I hope
coming.
it does, because I've got a lot,
Jennifer,
to do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harold.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
And
both
now
of
we're
you
going to
so
end
much.
for the evening. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you.